Welcome to 10X Live, the show where we're revolutionizing business, one strategy at a time. At 10X Solutions, we have a bold vision to democratize business excellence. We believe every organization deserves the tools to thrive. Our secret sauce, the perfect blend of cutting-edge AI, the proven power of organizational health, and growth management. We assembled genius teams equipped with advanced analytics to supercharge decision-making and skyrocket efficiency. From AI-augmented strategy sessions that spark creativity to precise planning powered by human ingenuity, we're your catalyst for sustainable growth. We keep it real, we keep it honest, and we keep you ahead of the curve. Join us for the 10X revolution. We're not just adapting to change, we're leading it. Let's map out a future where your business doesn't just survive, it thrives. This is 10X Live. Let's transform business together.
Hey, welcome back. Episode 9, 10X Live. My name is Kyle Vernon with Vernon Business Partners, and we have the mastermind and inventor of an alpha product that we have that we'll be talking a little bit more about, Jay Scott of 10X Solutions. I'm so glad to be here. If it's Wednesday and it's 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, you know we're here and live, and we're always glad to have you in, chatting with us, talking about real-world problems, and hopefully solutions, always solutions, for that small business. So, Jay, I'm glad to be back. How are you doing today?
I am doing very good. Last week was a bit I was a bit tired, but a bit exhausted, and it felt like getting through even just the kind of the show was it was like the finish line to a long 3 weeks.
You were flexing a lot of tea the last couple weeks, and so for those that follow us each week, we appreciate you. And as you know, tea is for tenacity, and that is something that Jay absolutely can deliver on, but it does not give him joy or extra energy, does it?
No, it is absolutely draining. Yeah, and the other thing that drains me is galvanizing, which is fun. And like to just show how different we are. Like I get pretty pumped up at the end of these, like what they mean to me and how, and how beneficial they are. But when we're done, I need a nap.
Yeah.
Like I am drained, done after an hour of being on, live. And, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it is draining for me, where for you, I'm guessing it's energizing.
It is. I get out and I'm ready to go. Even walking out the door, my wife asked me to do a task after this, and she said, only if you have the energy. And I said, you know me, I'm going to have energy after this. I get to be in here. I'm enabling our audience to be able to have better solutions to their small business. And then, of course, I get the opportunity to go out and galvanize, which for those that are not familiar with the 6 types of work in genius, galvanizing is helping to speak belief and arranging the right people in the right spots to be able to get the job done. And so that's what we're here trying to do, democratize small business solutions through AI and the 6 types of work in genius. Marrying those together, we think that it's going to be a perfect arrangement for really helping get those small business partners to make a lot more money than those giant corporations. Because there's a lot more of us out there than there is of the corporate work world, is what we continue to see. And that's why we're here trying to help out the small guys, because we matter, you guys matter, right?
As a whole, small businesses, are what drive the economy, or what keep things going. And small businesses, leave a lot on the table when it comes to efficiency and value. So,
everybody wants to have flexibility. There's nothing better than small business, but it's there's some real challenges with it. You don't go out and just work hard and it works anymore. There's a lot of troubleshooting. There's a lot of social media. There's a lot of startup costs. And it's not just about hustling and handshakes anymore. But the beauty of where we are in history is that we have this thing called artificial intelligence. And I'm really excited about what that is going to do and what it has already done. And I think
superpower.
It is a superpower. It really is. And you know what? That superpower is something that you flexed recently. and something that I capitalized on. And so the last couple of weeks, we talked a lot about your alpha test for this product that you designed to help small businesses, to go in and help them with game plans, because as a end of the productivity model of the 6 types of working genius, I'm all about getting it done. You make me step back, you make me have to think about it, and guess what? It sucks energy out of me. You talked about that, so I avoid it, or I at least skip it, or I don't do it as well as do justice. And I can be busy all day doing the wrong things, but feeling productive. And then I wonder why it didn't work, which is why it's good to take a step back and have a real business plan, which we're also going to talk more about today as we revisit hardcore psychological safety and a topic there as well. So, but before we get into that, I had the opportunity to go through on Jay's website and fill out the survey, which he has worked tirelessly on. And just from my perspective, Jay, it was really simple. It was really well done. The payment process was easy. It was a whopping $5. It was more valuable than that to me. And we're just in the beginning process of actually breaking it down. But going in, quick payment, the questions, there's 4 different sections. You can see how quick, for those that were here last week, you could see the bar going along, which it was really helpful, because for somebody like me, progress is important, and I can see it going. That bar is telling me that I'm getting to the end. Questions visit everything from how ready am I for AI to organizational health to what is your business currently doing, right? And some of those factors. And so going in with those questions, they were, they weren't simplistic, but they were simple to answer if you know your business. And it was just a really great user experience. And kudos to you on your tireless efforts putting that together.
Yeah. And that's a conversation in itself, is that process. I've never coded before in my life, and built a full, from scratch, full code, using React and Node and VS Code and all these different things I didn't know existed a month ago.
The power of AI, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the test, right? I mean, how quick can you go from zero to a product, and an actual zero, right? Like, to the point where if I was building a house, I wouldn't have known what a hammer was. I mean, that's how far away from being a developer I was. And then within a few weeks, have something built, which is cool. And that speaks to the power of AI and using that and prompting and going through that, and to hardcore psychological safety, because it was, and the working genius. I mean, all of it works into that. We could talk about the need for the strategic search, right? That I knew that in order to get it done, I had to galvanize myself, and I had to have tenacity. And those are my frustrations. Not that I can't be good at them, but that they drain me when I do them. Yeah. And so if I had to operate all the time in those, so like if I had dragged it out, if I said, oh, this is a project I want to keep working on and just keep working on and get it done, then, and I would try to fit G and T into my day, I would have found reasons not to do it.
Yeah.
So the strategic surge was to get it done, and it worked. Now we
shortcut the things we're not good at. We just can't. We don't want to stay there. We don't want to stay there long, because it sucks the energy out of us. So when you were talking about, let's talk total man hours. So you started from zero. You started creating this wonderful product, which I will say one of the biggest benefits is that I can do it on my time. So we all know that a one-legged man in a butt-kicking competition is what a small business owner is, right? That you just don't have the time. So I was able to sit down and knock this out. I didn't have to schedule a time with you, Jay. I would have to for the follow-up, but it was simply logging into your website, get started. Took me 20 minutes at most. I was able to go through it. As long as you have your numbers, for any of you that are Dave Ramsey fans, show up with your numbers, be ready to have some of those so you can state them. As long as you have a good feel for your business, you can go and do this. I'll log it in, gives Jay time to digest it, and then help finish it to make it all pretty, because we know AI is not perfect at this point. Not to mention, Jay, you have expertise in HR. And so you organizational health is something that you've been expert in for a long time, and you're just married the two. And so back to the beginning question, you started from ground zero, started using AI. How much time did you put in? What was your deadline?
Well, I had to push it back the deadline a week. Started probably around the mid August, and was hoping that I'd have it done by August 31st. So kind of unrealistic deadlines, which are good sometimes too, right? I think if I had given myself 3 weeks, I probably would have taken 4. So I'm glad I gave myself 2, because it took, I ended up getting it done in 3. But total hours, it's hard to say, because, actually like developing and working on it, probably 30 or 40. In addition to that, because I don't know what I'm doing and I'm working with I relate like AI, even being a superpower, I would describe it as working with a coding savant 3-year-old. Is really what it, because it's like short term, with forgetting things, like repeating processes, not understanding. Like there's a lot of room for growth on the AI. So it was getting a lot of the coding right, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so here's what I have, and then it would analyze it and fix it. Well, then what it would send back, if one little thing's wrong, now the whole thing doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it makes mistakes and it hallucinates and does these things. So like trusting it and doing all this stuff is, really what it ended up being for me was like a crash course in development theory. More than coding or anything else. So that experience was great. But yeah, and hours aside and all that, the goal of it, and I think that we accomplished this, especially for the test, because right now we're just in test. We want to make sure that the product is great, that it has the 10x value, that it is exactly what people would want. And so right now we're going through testing and getting feedback and doing a lot of those things. And that's, so being there, it's perfect for what it is. But the idea, like you said, is easy in, easy out, as few clicks as possible, as easy, as simple and easy, for the user as possible. And like you said too, the value of, because that's important, you could charge $1,000 for something, and if it takes you 2 hours to do it, that's going to be a struggle for people.
Yeah.
And I just mean to say that oftentimes 2 hours of people's times can be more valuable to them than the entry price, right? Than the price tag on it. And so the goal was to make it as quick and easy to get in as possible, that within 20 minutes you can do everything on your end and then get results. And here's the thing, the results, they're not mind-blowing. They're not like going to change the world. Oh my gosh, I didn't know this about my business. It's not like AI knows way more about your business than you do by answering 20 questions or more. But what it is, and we'll talk about this, is we're talking about inertia, right? We get so moving in a direction in our business that sometimes we aren't able to look to the left or to the right, or we don't feel like we have the time to look left and right. It's forward, drive, because we have to, right? And we kind of get in those modes. And so that's inertia. So if you're moving full speed ahead, or if you've gotten to a point where you have started to get bloated, maybe, and you have too many bureaucratic processes, and maybe you have too many inefficiencies or people who aren't clear as to what they're doing, and so the results aren't happening like they should, well, then that is also a form of inertia, right? The inertia in physics it's the fact that a body in motion stays in motion, and a body in rest stays in rest unless something external influences them. Right. So in a lot of ways, what you think about is the 10x action plan is the inertia breaker. You spend 20 minutes, you do these surveys, and it gives you some ideas that can help nudge and bump your decision making and your strategy out of kind of the current rut that it's in.
Well, and something that you've told me before beyond all this. So let's say you could go to a friend, somebody that's really great in business, one of the problems about doing that is that there's an emotional tug there. Like, unless you really have a great friend that can shoot you straight and you can both survive the relationship, which I think most people probably don't have that. The nice thing about AI, which you've taught me this, and it's really helped me to overcome that it's a robot that's going to chase me,
Right.
is that it doesn't care who you are, right? It's just going to come in, it's going to look at it very black and white. And spoiler alert, for a lot of these plans, going through these programs, you're paying X amount for a few solutions, but it's making sure checks and balances that you are on the right path. Once you say that it's going to be confirmation, affirmation of what you're doing well, and then there's a few golden nuggets at minimum in there.
Yeah.
Because you're probably not a small business owner without knowing a thing or two before you get started, I would imagine.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so it's the questions are designed to basically help it pick out your, one way to think about it is it can help pick out your business out of a million, right? So if you told me that you are in the business to business consulting sector, right? Well, that's one. Now you're one in a million, right? Mm-hmm. But by asking more questions, you're kind of narrowing it down to the point where it has a good understanding of kind of a core understanding of your business. So then the ability then for it to offer suggestions, provide insights, and it's doing it from a place of it's one of those things where it's like not having the knowledge, and to your point, not having the emotion becomes part of its strength, right? Because it may get it wrong. It's gonna suggest a lot of things, and it may get some of them wrong, but I 100% guarantee you that it's going to get a lot of it right, and it will help bump you out of whatever kind of form of inertia you're in. Whether you're moving too fast forward and you're not looking side to side, or you're not moving fast enough, and you don't know how to regain speed. That's kind of the idea, is to break the inertia with that.
Yeah. Being overwhelmed, trying to figure out how to do this, you're breaking your routine of just completing things that may not be important. So long story short, it's a great product. Again, it's in the testing phase. I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to do it. I look forward to diving further into the results of it with you, Jay. But
we'll go into that too, man. Because if you saw, there was about $500,000 difference, but it showed about $400,000 value that we could start driving. It'll take a few years to realize it, but yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So let's talk. Because it's one thing to see it and realize what it could be, and it's another thing to start putting it in action.
Which is, you said galvanizing takes energy out of you. That's something that this plan will do for me, is galvanizing, setting it up and inspiring me to be able to go. Because there are times, you probably don't, Jay, because you're bulletproof, but there's times I doubt myself as a small business owner. There's times where I wake up and think, man, am I going to be able to do this? Right? That's the real reality. And that's for anybody that's doing anything that they have belief and purpose in. That can be within any organization. And so this was well worth it. I look forward to seeing the results and digesting it, likely more next week with when we hit double digits on episode 10.
Yeah.
But I think that this may be, unless you have another anything else you want to add to it.
Not for that right now. I spent the last few weeks talking about it, and and I'm going to keep talking about it. I will say the goal is full launch. It would be in November. It's a bit arbitrary, and I don't know exactly if we'll be able to launch but that's the goal. And again, it's one of those things. If I say December 1st is the goal, I'll probably have it done January 1st. So, I'm saying November 1st is the goal. Not only going to be for small business owners, but also individuals. So I'm going to be able to create a lot more of these tools, because they're all in a very similar space. So whether you're looking for a career change, or you're looking for if we're looking for a career, or you're stuck on a project, there's going to be a lot of different action plans that we can offer, all for about the same price. So the value is going to be incredibly tremendous. The one thing, and I may eat my words and have to change sometime in the future, but it's not a 10x solution unless it's providing 10 times the value.
Yeah.
So that's the guarantee. That's the promise for anything that 10x Solutions puts out. And so that's the baseline for it. So,
And I love that launch time. I'm putting my head around it, putting on my hat. 2025 planning will be happening then. People are scrambling. We all have the best intentions, but coming in November, being able to have this tool, and it's finally time to really set yourself apart in 2025. That'll be a great time to launch, and by then you'll have all the bugs worked out. You already have a couple clients. You're working through it right now. You've already troubleshooted it and worked a few, to say the least.
Yeah.
And so we'll be back at it. And so that'll be great. And I think that's a good lead into, we're talking about some consistent compass checks. So one of those checks would be talking about this. Each week we're moving on to it to get us to our goal. And so with hardcore psychological safety, in which we've been talking about, in the biography on Elon Musk, if we take a backtrack, that's going to be our primary topic today. And so, Jay, if you can go in and talk a little bit about just kind of setting the scene on why we think consistent compass checks are so important, what they are, and then the algorithm in which this fits into. I think those are probably three topics in which we'll review today.
Yeah. And we are going to have to take a very high level approach on this. We won't be able to get too far into the weeds because this is something that, you could have full business courses on the theory of constraints, psychological safety, Elon Musk's algorithm, all these different things. We could dive so deep into them that it would take a long time. So we're going to have to keep it pretty high level. So for a little bit of background, a few people had recommended the biography of Elon Musk to me, and I recently read it, and I was very motivated reading that. And it got towards the very end of the book, and towards the end of the book, there's some statements about how much Elon Musk hates psychological safety and how he believes it's the enemy of progress and innovation. That he believes discomfort in being hardcore is what it should be. Those are more of his core values than psychological safety. And so it really kind of triggered me because it was in a good way. Like, it prompted me to really kind of think about things, because for one, I had been so kind of inspired and motivated by reading the whole thing, and really challenged in a lot of ways. And all of a sudden, like, he said, what? And I kind of realized that he doesn't understand what psychological safety is. So I think from the context, he thinks or thought that psychological safety is creating a safe place at work, right? We're a place where nobody's going to be offended, where everybody's going to be, appear to have harmony. Everybody's going to be working together and smiling, and it's going to be all good, right? Well, it's bullshit. That's not how work gets done.
Yeah.
Right. And so to that point, he's absolutely right. And that's not what psychological safety is. So to define psychological safety, it's the ability to screw up and not feel like somebody's going to go back and start plotting how to use that against you. That's a way to think about it. It's the ability to say I screwed up, or to voice an opinion and know you're not going to get beat down for it. Or to call somebody else out and say, you know what, you dropped the ball and that affected me. And I need you to know that, because I please don't do it again. Like, there's psychological safety is like it's like the grease that allows good conflict and good innovation, right? So it's not the antithesis. It's not the enemy to innovation and progress. It's a driver for it. Okay, so now that I thought this through, I realized, okay, he doesn't understand what it is. Let's redefine it. But then how do I take what I learned from him and from reading the book and start applying it to other things? So came up with this idea of hardcore psychological safety. And so the idea was just, can we blend the two? Not only, now that I've decided the two aren't opposed, I think he misunderstood what the word really means, what the term really means. So now that I think he kind of just got the definition wrong. It's not one or the other. They're not mutually exclusive. They create synergy. And if they create synergy, how does that work, right? Well, it creates a very driven, motivated workforce is the idea. So with all that said, getting into consistent compass checks, this is a long lead in, but getting into consistent compass checks, this is the third tenet of hardcore psychological safety. The first one is gravity of purpose. And it's the tenet that says your purpose as an organization should be so strong that it pulls everything and everyone to it. So that it drives behavior, it drives policy, it shapes everything. Also, you can't be hardcore without purpose. You're not going to watch somebody drive hard if they're not driving towards something they believe in.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're not clear about your purpose, and if everybody from new hires to people who have been there the whole life of your business, if they don't clearly understand what the purpose is, then they are not going to be driving efficiency, driving innovation, and doing those things. So that's the first thing, is you have to start there. You have to start with the gravity of purpose. And the gravity is the key word there, right? It is a key word with it, that it has to be so strong. It's pulling everything around it towards itself. It's attracting everything in the business towards it.
That word purpose for me is that hits home, because as a galvanizer, that's what I think. Now, if I'm taking this on the flip side and looking at it, I do know that there's people out there, and I think Elon would probably be this in some ways too. It's kind of fluffy, right? But when you're talking about purpose and vision and driving it, you're talking about being uncomfortable. You're talking about purpose and pulling. I just love all of that and pulling together. And I think that that's something that's really missed right now, because we're such a data-driven society.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the numbers, do what we say, and there's going to be success. Here's the algorithm. Here's the process. Just do it. But I think we're feeling, and I wouldn't mind hearing this. I didn't mean to interrupt you too much, Jay,
No.
but
we can chase every rabbit trail. I appreciate every rabbit trail.
Yeah. Well, it just is. I think this is where we're really missing. I think this is what kind of COVID did. We locked down, we divided, and people felt like their voice wasn't heard. And I think that's a big point of what you're trying to drive home here. And what is misunderstood is that people need to be heard, because they need to feel that they're invested. And what are they invested in? If I'm going to show up and do this job more hours a week than I am with my family, or doing the fun activities I want to do, I probably want it to be worthwhile, more than just a paycheck.
Yes. Yeah. And especially it started being more true for millennials than it was for Gen X and baby boomers. Yeah. But it's even way more true for Gen Z. Is people want to work with a purpose. Yeah. It used to be, to your point, it used to be, this is your job and you need a job. So you need to do A, B, C, D every day. Yeah. And you need to be here at 8:00 in your seat working at 8. And you need to, go through all these things. It's, we're learning that's that worked before, right? Because that's a generational thing. That was more of how it was. It was, you were more okay with knowing that you're going to go to work and you're basically going to sit there and do what has to get done. And
because your purpose was your family, right? We had a lot of one income families, and your purpose every day was, if you don't perform well, you're not chasing that next promotion, then you were failing your family. So the purpose was monumental. But now there's a lot of options within the workforce, which is great. We have lots of opportunities to go and either be our own business owners or work for a major corporation. The purpose has changed, I think. And so I think that's why.
And that's exactly it. Yeah. I mean, I think that you nailed so much of it on the head with that, because the purpose used to be largely external. Well, now oftentimes we go to work to find purpose.
Right.
And that was even more. That's even more so now because of COVID. Because you think about before COVID, how would you blow off steam? You would hang out with your friends, and you would do something fun with your friends, largely, right? Or you'd vent to your friends. Everybody has those friends that they could just on, because we need to have that. We need to have the ability to do that. Okay, so COVID happens. Now you're on lockdown, but you're still working, so you're still having interactions with coworkers. So now who do you vent to? So now
or yourself.
No, your coworkers.
Oh yeah, yes,
yeah. So it ends up being like a lot of friendships, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of venting, a lot of things that used to happen like at the bar after work with friends away from coworkers is now happening at work in the office with coworkers. Right. And so in a lot of ways, then that shifted, going back to purpose, you also want to find purpose in your work as well. Right. Purpose is work is a lot more of your identity than just a paycheck.
Yes, I think you are spot on with that, because it was pulling it into, we were trying to figure out how to separate where we were missing it, how to separate home and work, because there was no separation anymore.
Right.
And then when you did talk, it was either a crucial conversation at work or one-on-one or a team meeting, and there wasn't any outlets. And so, yeah, interesting how different it is and how important purpose is, and doing then the compass checks, just getting right back to where it was, because I think that all pairs really well. But why are compass checks then important as we dive in with purpose?
Yeah, so there's a few reasons for that. The first one is to prevent mission drift, right? So it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget why you're there, right? Sometimes it starts to feel like getting your coffee at a certain time, getting to your desk at a certain time, checking your emails from this time to that time, and then dealing with fires the rest of the day. Feels like the most important thing for your business, but it's not, right? It's the ability to think about the business and to strategize where you're going, as opposed to, if you're not thinking ahead and strategizing and having compass checks to make sure that your people, your processes, your systems are aligned with your purpose, then you run the risk of drifting away from your purpose, which then starts to begin kind of the death spiral. And you may not see it for years, right? But little inefficiencies, people become a little bit less motivated, start finding ways to cut corners a little bit more. Your customer service would start to deteriorate. Sometimes your quality will start to deteriorate because we're just caught up in the day-to-day.
Quiet quitting.
Exactly.
Like we saw a lot of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was, you're absolutely spot on. And that's what this is evolved into. I love that.
Yeah.
Sorry. Big ones.
So not only, think about being the captain of a ship, going across the Pacific, right? Just because you knew you're heading at the beginning, you knew why you were on this trip. You would not have set sailed without a purpose, right? But it's not like you checked your heading at the beginning and then just trusted that you were going the right way the whole time.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what consistent compass checks are. Are we on course? Are we on course? Are we on course? It's consistently asking that question, and not once a year, right? Because things can drift over the course of a year. It's consistent. It's regular compass checks to make sure that you have not drifted. And with that, there is a process. And so the process within the Hardcore Psychological Safety compass checks is merging the theory of constraints. So the theory of constraints really simply put, says there is one limiting factor in your business right now that has created a bottleneck for throughput, for you to be able to bill, to be able to get paid. There is a thing in your business that is the bottleneck right now. And so it's a process of identifying and then removing that constraint. And you remove it by the first thing you do is, let's just, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this is why we have the compass checks. I think we talked about it enough.
Yeah.
And then as I'm talking about now, so it's a refined process, adapting hardcore psychological safety with the theory of constraints, and then Elon Musk's algorithm. So the first step, which I was just jumping into, so identifying the constraint. And this is straight from, so I'll show you this too. So he wrote a book called The Goal, like in the 60s or 70s. And it was, it became like a textbook for MBA class, for MBA courses, coursework and different things. And then this is kind of the follow-up where he actually starts breaking down the model of the theory of constraints. I'm going the wrong way with it.
It's there. Yeah, I see it. Nailed it.
First try. So the first thing you do is identify the constraint, and there's a process to that. And again, we're going very high level, so we're not going to go into the process of that. It's a process of using the Socratic method, change management, and something they call effect, cause, effect. But you're able to identify what the constraint is. And then, so the bend with hardcore psychological safety is that purpose is part of this process too, right? So from his version, it's all process, right? So this purpose is part of this process as well. So that's kind of where the difference lies. So what you do with that is you do an analysis. So we're not going to get into how that analysis is done, but you do an analysis to identify the constraint. And you want to make sure that you identify the constraint, because you don't want to guess a constraint and start working on something that's not the constraint. And you had asked me before we were talking, kind of a simpler way of explaining this. So to kind of, for everybody listening, to kind of think about the theory of constraints in a very simple way. Let's say you have a process to get a product out, and the process has to go through A, B, and C. And one thing goes through A, and then it goes through B, and then it goes through C, and then it's done. So we're not going to worry about having multiple parts or anything too complicated here. But let's say that whatever system you have for A is able to get 20 of these units through to B, to the next system per minute. So you're getting 20 per minute to B. And let's say B is only able to move through 10 units per minute to the next process, which is C. And let's say C can do 30 per minute, right? Well, C can never get to 30 per minute because only 10 is coming through from process B. So process B is the constraint, right? So one of the next things, after you've identified the constraint, then one of the next things you want to do is challenge the constraint and start simplifying it, right? And this is where it starts borrowing from Musk's algorithm as part of the process. But the idea is that you exploit the constraint. And so it might be the first simple answer might be, okay, well, let's buy 2, right? So whatever machine or whatever process is holding up the system, well, if we doubled it, then now it's no longer the constraint, or it may not, or at least it's doubled. But if you think about it, if you double the constraint, in this instance, if 20 is being done in A, 10 is getting through on B, and 30 on C, well, then only 10 will get through the system. 10 per minute is the whole system right now is bottlenecked to 10. So if you double that to 20, then you have 20, 20, 30. So now 20 is the is the limit. So you didn't do anything else except find the constraint and you figured it out. And so the idea with Elon Musk's algorithm, without getting too far into that, the first step of his algorithm is to question everything, question the requirements, right? So is it possible that we have too many bureaucratic processes involved in step B, right? Is it possible that it's slowed down because it's too complicated?
Yeah.
And so you start you start, challenging the requirements. And he goes to the extreme with it. It's for him, it's, I want to know the name of the person who set the requirement. But it's good to, so even at that process, once you've identified the constraint and you start to exploit it, you start to make it, less of the constraint, then it increases throughput. And part of that process is, simplifying and removing anything that is making it overcomplicated.
So,
And
well, I was just gonna say. So when I think of that analogy, it might be Jeff Bezos being fed up with FedEx and with Amazon, right? Like there was a
mhm,
bottleneck there to where we couldn't get stuff as fast as we could have. He started expanding businesses to where each city has their own warehouse. You have to fill them all, and we get our 1 day, 2 day shipping like that too, right? Would that fit within
absolutely,
this
yeah,
model with
yeah,
what this looks like?
yeah.
And
And that's, I think that's a great example, because let's say that we had the ability. Let's say all the warehouses are full and we have everything in stock, but if we're not able to deliver, right? If it takes 5 days to deliver because we're having to go through all these other systems, then that is absolutely the constraint. You identify that, and and the first thing they did. So we talk about exploiting the constraint. It's just like a stopgap solution, not a long term solution. And I remember back, Amazon started renting a bunch of cars. Like they didn't have their own
yeah,
fleet, but
right,
like one of the first things they did is they just started driving. They just started, they started renting cars and delivering them, right?
yeah.
And that's a great example of exploiting the constraint. That's not the long term solution, right? But in order to increase throughput, you got to do what you got to do to widen that constraint.
Yeah, and then
And,
UPS was a constraint, and FedEx. I don't know exactly their working model, but I think they just have one main warehouse where everything was shipped, and then all the trucks went from there. Right. That was the
yeah,
first iteration of that process to where then this got exploited, and everybody knows a little bit about Amazon, I think now. But man, that what a overcoming that bottleneck
yeah,
was
yeah,
amazing
huge.
and
Well,
lucrative.
and for them, right, and for them, it set up what they call um, um, economies of scale,
Mm,
right? Where now they have the fleet. And so now that they have the fleet of deliveries, it not only are they able to do it faster, but it's way more cheap. It's cheaper for them too. So now no competitors can compete at that level without developing a fleet themselves, right? So if you're going to try and compete with Amazon, good luck, because they're economies of scale, in that area. And they've like blown the water out economies of scale across the board. You can buy, I have like I have Amazon brand towels.
it,
Like,
it is wild.
uh,
I feel like before Amazon, we were talking about how trucks were becoming obsolete, and now you can't drive without having to go around a few
yeah,
all the
yeah,
time,
right,
anywhere with
yeah,
that. And so this is absolutely an awesome, again, compass checks. Are we going the right direction here?
yeah,
Yeah, exploit the constraint.
yeah.
Love it. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So step two, so challenge and simplify,
Yeah.
is the next one, that we were kind of talking about. I jumped forward a little bit. But once kind of as part of that process, then you want to exploit the constraint. And exploit has a negative word, right? Like, because people get exploited as well. But when it comes to this, it just means, and that's a great example, with Amazon, going out and renting a bunch of trucks to start delivering these things for yourself is exactly what that is. We've identified the constraint, and now we know that if we throw resources at the constraint, then it's going to widen, but it's not long term. So that's that part. And then with purposeful action too, right? So again, it all comes back to purpose. So then you maximize the performance of the identified constraint by optimizing resources and workflows, following steps 3 through 5 of Musk's algorithm. And so 3 through 5 of his algorithm is, so simplify and optimize, which we kind of have as step 2. Accelerate cycle time, So it's all about speed. So it's getting it through as quick as possible. So once you've simplified, now you're able to maximize efficiency. And then once you've maximized efficiency, then you automate for that. So this is in this step. This is when his algorithm would apply there. His algorithm. One of the great things about his algorithm and the theory of constraints, how they work together, is on step 5. We'll see it a little bit more. So I'll try not to jump ahead again. But and I know I can talk without rest, without break. So it's hard for you to kind of jump in and sometimes, but I'll try and pause more.
No, you're good. I'll galvanize. I'll jump in. That's the lightning bolt genius that I have in there. So we're moving along just fine.
Perfect. Yeah. So step 3. So then once we've maximized the performance of the constraint, then we are going to go through a process of making sure that we did the right thing. Right. So then feedback is always beneficial. And so basically once we've completed step 3, step 4 basically says we're not done. We're going to always make sure that we are collecting feedback and iterating and making improvements as much as possible. So that involves data and feedback. It also, there's a lot of, next week, the fourth tenet of hardcore psychological safety is embrace the discomfort. And so we start to see that here. So we start to see the embrace discomfort for progress, right? Because progress, change, people don't like change. People are resistant to change. And it's not that people don't like change. It's that people don't like things ending. And you cannot have change without something ending, right? A process, whatever it is, it's impossible to improve. It's impossible to improve something without putting to death something else. Right. And that thing you're putting to death and that thing that you're ending, somebody cares about it and somebody likes it and somebody doesn't want it to change. Right. So that's really kind of what this is too, is you have this idea of a embraced discomfort means that as an organization, kind of as a culture, we know that change is the only constant. And so kind of getting that in your mind on the front end is important with that.
Yeah. Discomfort's a big deal. So, as humans, we've talked about this before too, Jay, we're the path of least resistance, right? That's where we're going. And now this algorithm, this conversation's pushing us towards discomfort. I hear leaders say it's very healthy for an organization to have some confrontation, because that is where growth happens. I'm a personal train background. The only way you get stronger is by tearing muscle down, and it rebuilds stronger. Like, you have to have that. And that's why I think with parenting, probably one of the key words, if you're bored later, if you type in resilience, you're going to see a lot of videos about parenting and teaching kids resilience right now. And that's where this discomfort is. That's where this algorithm is taking that. That is really, really interesting. These compass checks too, talking through the 6 types of work in Genius, I think the compass checks are all the activation phase. And so you talk about discernment and galvanizing being those 2 middle geniuses. If those are something that people thrive on, I would think that that's where these compass checks should be that should be your type of people, getting in there and reevaluating it. And then
and it's cool that you bring up the 6 working geniuses, and even like thinking about it as you're talking about it, it follows this process. Widget follows this process, right? So what's step 1? Step 1 is identify the constraint. How do you identify the constraint without wonder?
Can't.
Right?
The greater possibility.
Yeah. So you have to have wonder. You have to have the genius of wonder, to really help identify the constraint. And then once you've done that, and then challenging and simplifying, those are both inventive processes.
Yeah, you're solutioning. And so at that point, and even the word challenge, like a true inventor, they like that. They like to be able to challenge and create a solution. They're all about taking that head on. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And we're starting to move to discernment here too. Right.
with trust, which is a big deal with discernment. The word
Mm-hmm.
trust is something a discerner craves. Trust their gut instinct on where this is going. So yes, you're right. So
Right.
we're into the activation.
So we're
of the third
starting.
one.
So we're starting to do it. And now step three. Step three is exploit the constraint with purposeful action. What does that sound like?
That's wild. Why? I can't believe I didn't pick up on that. Yeah. So now
I don't mean either, right?
Yeah.
But this is what we love about the six working genius is it works for everything. So even if it's a process, it works, and we're finding that now. Like it's purposeful action. Is that not ingrained in galvanizing?
No, or yes, it's
Right.
absolutely ingrained. It's something I love and thrive on. Want purposeful action.
Yeah. And now the fourth one: integrate feedback and iterate with resilience. It doesn't sound identical, but you can definitely see the enablement in there.
Yeah, and is resilience tenacity? I mean, that's what I when I see resilience. That's what somebody's powering through the route. They are going to complete no matter what, which is why you need these compass checks to make sure they're completing the right thing. But integrate the feedback. So yeah, they're taking in whatever you need, boss. They're going to enable this to work on,
and they're the ones providing the feedback. Hopefully,
yeah,
right. Yep. They're the ones driving this through and collecting that. Providing the data and maybe even collecting the data and driving it. Yeah. And then the last one, elevate the constraint and prevent inertia with strategic surges. This is a cyclical thing, right? So step 5 brings you back to step 1. So when we talked about exploiting the constraint, the example was Amazon going out and renting a bunch of trucks because UPS and FedEx were a constraint. Right. So their ability to deliver quickly was a constraint, and they exploited that constraint by going out and renting a bunch of trucks. Right. But elevating the constraint is the whole process of them building a fleet. Right. So now they own the trucks, they own the process, they own, for the whole thing from order to delivery. Right. So that was where we mentioned, the economies of scale as well as that. So as part of elevating the constraint, they also, created these economies of scale for themselves. But that's the difference between elevating the constraint and exploiting it. Does that make sense in those two?
It absolutely does. And you're right. It circles back around. That's how the working genius, it is finishing, it's completion, and then evaluating, and are we doing this right? So we don't, so we can continue to stay in business. How are we evolving? How are we changing? And then with strategic surges, which you went through a surge recently, so you know what that feels like.
Right. Yeah. And that was another thing that that's straight from Elon Musk, learning about him. And I've had these ideas before too, but the idea of strategic surges came directly from reading his biography. And the idea of preventing inertia with this too is an important one. So again, using that example of Amazon. So after they've elevated the constraint, can you imagine if they kept renting trucks?
Yeah, right.
Right. So many of the things that we do while we're correcting the constraint, once it's elevated, and by that it means we've broken it. It's no longer the constraint. Now something else is the constraint. Right. So going back to our other thing, if process A can get 20 through, process B only gets 10 through, and process 3 or C only gets 30 through, if we raise process B from 10 being the constraint to 30, now we've broken it. Now we've elevated it. It's no longer the constraint. Now A is the constraint. Now the whole system is only allowing through 20 because that's where A is. Right. But in order to prevent inertia, the systems and processes we use to elevate the constraint may not be relevant anymore. And so that's the example of they're still not renting trucks, are they? Right? Because that process is no longer needed. It's no longer the constraint.
So if
it's the constraint, they'll start renting trucks again. I guarantee you. If delivery is the constraint, bam, they're renting trucks again.
I don't know if you have this out by you, but I'm in Michigan, you're in California. Not too far from me, there's a giant Amazon building that, to my knowledge now, continues to sit empty. And so I don't know if you have seen that or not, but during COVID, we talk about things evolving and changing quickly, like it faster than ever. We talked about that a lot, where these compass checks are really important because now we're not doing 5-year forecasts. Like, you can't think out that far ahead. I would say this is one place where Amazon maybe has hit a bump. I've heard this, they have a few vacant buildings. So what about that, Jay? So talk through maybe one more example here as we're getting close to our time. But they had that vacant building. What happened there? Is that a surge? What did they, too much inertia? What, I don't know if you're familiar with that. What's that look like, you think, in this model of what went wrong?
I would have to guess. My guess is that their predictive modeling showed that there was going to be, it was going to provide either quicker access or more affordable delivery to a region, and then something happened.
Yeah, I think they thought that malls and shopping in general was going to totally disappear, which we kind of felt that way, right?
Right.
A lot of businesses started selling their residencies of commercial business, and it felt like people were going to just kind of stay at home and do everything online with that. But that inertia may have taken them too far. They're obviously doing fine at this point. But I did hear at one point that was
that is a great example of inertia, though, right? Where you're growing so fast, all of a sudden you start acquiring and building, acquiring and building, acquiring and building, and you didn't realize it was time to slow down.
Yeah, the bottleneck got too wide.
Yeah.
The C was too wide.
Right. Yeah.
Or maybe that's C of B.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So once you've broken that bottleneck, then now you need to find the next bottleneck. Yeah.
Which bottlenecks here are important, not like Labor Day, Memorial Day, where we're trying to drive north. Bottlenecks, traffic jams, California, LA living, right?
Right.
But bottlenecks are important to identify and break. Smooth out.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it's all about throughput, right? For a business, it's all about throughput. Are you getting the product into people's hands and getting paid for it? Right? Or the product or the service. It's all about throughput. And if there is a thing that is currently limiting your throughput, right? For you, Kyle, right now, it might be marketing.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Like right now, you have all the skills and more so the skills to operationally be excellent at what you do. So that's not the constraint. It doesn't require a lot of money for you to do what, as far as performing the services you perform, right? So it's not like you can't perform them because you don't have the money for it, right? So then the only thing left is customers.
It is. It's the audience, finding enough of the audience to be able to get it and speak with. Because when we have the opportunity, it's awesome. Like, I love this stuff. It helps to, if we're talking compass checks and bottlenecks, it helps people to figure out their bottlenecks just through this identification and increasing productivity through the 6 types of working genius. So you are absolutely correct there, that it's just a matter of trying to get the name out there and, influx all the leads I'm going to have now from this conversation of lead generation companies reaching out, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
My phone probably heard that, and every Facebook ad is going to be about lead generation.
Exactly. Yeah. But you get the idea. So if the lack of sales is the constraint, then why would you start putting more effort into one of the other two?
Yeah.
Right. And so always identifying the bottleneck and then that being the place for that. So, and this is all about strategy, right? And this is all about the theory of constraints and how it fits into with Elon Musk's algorithm, how it fits into hardcore psychological safety. It's just one thing. This is a process of continuous improvement. It's a piece of strategy, right? It is a tool for strategy. Other models you can use. One of the ones I love, I know we're running out of time, I'll try and be very quick, is the GHOST model. It's understanding the difference between goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics, and how they work together, so that you can be aligned and very clear about the direction you're going. And then there's like blue ocean strategy as well, which is about creating new markets, creating new value cost frontiers. And so that's very different too. So that's not necessarily a constraint. That's about finding new markets and how to do that. Also part of strategy. The best definition I've ever heard of strategy, it's allocation of resources, right? As a business, are you choosing where to allocate the resources? Sometimes you're not. Sometimes it's being allocated for you because the business has so much inertia. But
well, episode 9 is in the books of 10X Live. It's been a great week. A very fun episode once again.
This one went really fast.
It did go really fast today. It was a great conversation. Again, Alpha Test is live and out there for the product of finding out your roadmap to how to improve your small business. I did it. It's great. I love it. I look forward to digesting and looking at that closer. As you stated, solo entrepreneur, results could be $500,000 more. That's a pretty good result. I would love that. I would take that. And then, of course, hardcore psychological safety and doing regular checks and just digesting that. So love this episode today. I appreciate you, Jay. Look forward to seeing everybody next week again on Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then,
11
reach out with questions.
11 and 2, right?
What's that?
I think you said 10 and 1. It's 11 and 2. 11 PST.
I'm sorry,
2 p.m.
I did.
Eastern.
Yes.
Yeah.
11 and 2.
If you want to get here an hour, early, then
yes, 11 and 2. You are correct. Edit that out. Rewatch this. Until then, take care, everyone.